The screen flickered, numbers blurring, then snapping into impossible focus. Zeros. So many zeros trailing a minus sign, it looked like a centipede crawling across my life. My breath hitched, caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. My office chair suddenly felt too hard, the air too thin. Outside, the city hummed its usual indifferent tune, a distant siren wailing. But here, in this moment, the only sound was the frantic, impossible beat of my own heart against my ribs. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a glitch. It was gone. Every single cent. My retirement. Years of sacrifice, of saying no to little things, of building a future I thought was mine, ours. Wiped clean. The digital statement seemed to mock me, a cold, hard confirmation of an unimaginable void. My hand trembled, reaching for the mouse, scrolling down, hoping against hope for context, for a different account number, for anything that wasn't this financial flatline. And then I saw the destination account, the name attached, and the world outside my window, the indifferent city, the distant siren. It all faded to a dull roar. The silence in my office was absolute, deafening. It wasn't just money that was gone. It was everything I thought I knew. If this story hits a chord with you, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is. Drop a comment and let me know. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. My life before was ordinary. Comfortably, reliably ordinary. Max and I had built something solid, or so I believed. A house in the suburbs with a garden I fussed over, 2 cars, a shared history that felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. We weren't extravagant. We saved. Diligently. Especially for retirement. That fund wasn't just money, it was freedom. Freedom from worry, freedom to maybe travel later, freedom to just be when the time came. It was my security blanket, woven thread by thread over 20 years. Max worked in finance, I was in marketing. We had our routines, our Friday night takeout, our Sunday morning crossword puzzles. There was a quiet rhythm to our days, a predictable comfort that I mistook for permanence. I trusted him implicitly. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. We shared a bed, a life, a future. My desires were simple: security, peace, the quiet joy of growing old with someone I loved. The retirement fund was the physical manifestation of that hope, a promise we'd made to ourselves. The first tremor wasn't the bank statement. It was smaller, harder to define. Max was different. Distracted. More late nights at work, he said. A new project. He was always on his phone, but in a way that felt secretive, not just busy. He'd clear his browsing history. He was less present when he was home, his eyes distant, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Sometimes that wasn't for me. I brushed it off. Stress, I thought. Work pressure. A man focused on providing. That was the story I told myself because the alternative was inconvenient. Uncomfortable. Easier to ignore the subtle shifts, the growing distance that felt less like 2 ships passing in the night and more like one ship slowly, deliberately, changing course. Then came the statement. The official one in the mail. He'd intercepted the online alerts. But the paper still found its way to me, tucked beneath a pile of junk mail he'd clearly missed in his haste. The paper didn't lie. The number screamed. The transaction date was weeks ago. Not a mistake. A deliberate, calculated withdrawal. All of it. And the recipient name. Nova Solutions, LLC. The name meant nothing to me at first. My mind reeled, trying to make sense of it. Why would Max send all our retirement savings, my retirement savings, the bulk of it was in my name, built for my salary and investments I'd chosen, to some random LLC? My hands shook as I typed the name into Google.
Nova Solutions.
A startup. Tech-focused. Promising some revolutionary app. The website was slick, modern. And there on our team page was a photo. A woman.
Smiling.
Bright-eyed.
Young.
Her name was Clara. And beneath her photo, her title. Founder and CEO. My stomach plummeted. The distant look, the secretive phone calls, the late nights. Not stress. Not work. Her. And my money. Funding her. The initial shock gave way to a cold, blinding panic. I tried to call Max. No answer. His phone went straight to voicemail. I called his office. He'd left for the day. I was alone in the quiet house that suddenly felt vast and empty, the silence amplifying the frantic echo in my head. He took my money. He gave it to her. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was absolute. It hollowed me out from the inside. I paced the floor, hands gripping my head, trying to breathe. What did I do?
Who did I call?
A lawyer? The police? My hands hovered over the phone, frozen by a bizarre sense of shame. How could I explain this? My husband, my rock, had stolen my future to fund his mistress's dream. It sounded like a bad movie plot. When Max finally came home, late, pretending everything was normal, the air between us was thick with unspoken accusations, with the truth I held in my shaking hand. I laid the bank statement on the counter, flat and damning. He saw it, and his face drained of color. The forced smile vanished. He stammered something about a temporary investment, a sure thing, a loan.
Lies.
Transparent, pathetic lies. He didn't deny Clara, not really. His eyes gave him away, shifting, unable to meet mine. He tried to spin it, to minimize it, to make me feel like I was overreacting. It's our money, he insisted, his voice gaining a desperate edge. It's an investment in our future. Our future? He was building a future with her, using my past. The fight was ugly, words like knives, tears that felt hot and useless on my face. He grew angry, defensive. Said I didn't understand business, didn't trust him. Trust him? The word was a bitter joke. He stormed out, leaving me shattered amidst the wreckage of our life, the paper statement a casualty on the floor. The days that followed were a blur of emotional turmoil and frantic, unproductive action. I contacted a lawyer. He was sympathetic but cautious. Max hadn't technically stolen the money from an external source. He'd withdrawn it from a joint account, even if the funds were primarily mine, earned over my career. Proving intent, proving it wasn't a legitimate, albeit foolish, investment was complex. Freezing assets required solid evidence, fast. Max was already moving money, consolidating, making it harder. The lawyer spoke in cautious terms of lengthy proceedings, uncertain outcomes, draining legal fees. It felt like another wall going up, trapping me. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop looking at Clara's startup online.
Nova Solutions.
Their social media was buzzing. Clara was charismatic, presenting herself as a visionary. They were getting press, attracting buzz. The thought of my money, my hard-earned security, fueling her success, her public triumph, while I was left with nothing, was a poison seeping into my veins. I saw photos of Max and Clara together at networking events, their smiles bright and confident, building their empire on the ashes of mine. It wasn't just the money anymore. It was the sheer audacity, the betrayal, the public humiliation I felt brewing beneath the surface. Friends tried to help, offering comfort, platitudes. You'll get through this, he's a scumbag, but no one could offer a solution that felt big enough, final enough, to cauterize the wound. I felt adrift, powerless, watching them sail away on a boat built from my salvaged dreams. The lowest point came weeks later. The lawyer called with more discouraging news. Max had argued the money was a business loan, with favorable terms, documented with a hastily drafted agreement between him and Nova Solutions. It looked shaky, but it complicated the theft angle. Freezing assets was now an uphill battle. Divorce was inevitable, but splitting what was left after the funds were gone and potentially tied up in a failing startup felt like a hollow victory. I was looking at starting over, not just financially, but from a place of deep, profound loss and public embarrassment. I saw Clara posting about securing a second round of funding validation, she called it. Validation built on my ruin. I sat in my quiet, empty house, the divorce papers a heavy weight on the table, and felt a wave of despair so strong it threatened to pull me under. I saw no way out that didn't involve years of painful litigation, watching them potentially succeed, and ending up with a fraction of what was taken. All felt lost. The future I had planned was gone, replaced by a terrifying, empty horizon. Then, something shifted. It wasn't a sudden flash of inspiration, but a slow, cold hardening. The despair didn't lift, but it solidified into something else. Anger. Not hot, wild anger, but a cold, quiet, focused rage. I was tired of being the victim, tired of feeling helpless, tired of watching them thrive on my destruction. I looked at Clara's confident smile, at Max's evasive texts, and a single thought began to form, small at first, then growing into an obsession. I wouldn't just survive this. I would make them regret the day they thought they could break me. The legal path was a maze designed to wear me down. But there were other paths. Financial paths. Business paths. They had used the language of business, of investment, to justify their theft.
Fine.
I would speak that language too. Only louder. With more authority. I started researching Nova Solutions differently. Not just Clara and Max, but the company itself, its market, its investors, its corporate structure. It wasn't just a standalone startup. It had received initial seed funding from a larger entity, an investment firm that nurtured promising tech ventures. I dug deeper. The firm, Ascendant Holdings, they specialized in identifying early-stage companies, providing capital and resources, and then either selling them off or integrating them into larger portfolios. Clara's startup wasn't just her baby. It was a small piece in Ascendant's larger game. The thought sparked. What if? What if I didn't just try to get my money back from Max and Clara? What if I went higher? What if I targeted the source that now held leverage over Nova Solutions? It felt insane. I knew nothing about investment firms, corporate acquisitions, hostile takeovers. My background was marketing, not high finance. But the conventional options were failing me. This insane idea felt like the only one that offered not just recovery, but a complete, undeniable turning of the tables. It was a seed of ice in the wasteland of my despair. The journey from despair to cold determination wasn't a straight line. There were days I felt the weight of it crush me, days I wanted to curl up and disappear. But the image of Clara's triumphant face, the memory of Max's casual cruelty, fueled a fire I didn't know I possessed. I needed information. I needed expertise. And I needed resources. The little I had left from joint savings Max hadn't touched, plus selling some personal assets, gave me a small war chest. It wasn't enough to buy an investment firm, not by a long shot. But it was enough to hire the right people. I found a forensic accountant, quiet, meticulous, with a reputation for uncovering buried truths. He helped me track the flow of my retirement funds, detailing how they were used by Nova Solutions. He confirmed the flimsy nature of Max's loan agreement, but also highlighted how neatly the money had been folded into Nova's early operations, making it hard to disentangle. Then I found her. Not a lawyer this time, but a consultant. A woman named Eleanor Vance. Sharp, discreet, operating in the shadows of the corporate world. She specialized in unconventional strategies. I presented my impossible idea, acquiring Ascendant Holdings, the parent company of Nova Solutions. She listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, the silence stretched. Then she smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who recognized a kindred spirit in the pursuit of an audacious goal. She didn't dismiss it. She broke it down. It was feasible, she said, under specific circumstances. Ascendant Holdings wasn't a giant corporation. It was privately held, but with a complex ownership structure involving several key partners and external investors who might be open to persuasion. It would take immense capital, intricate planning, absolute secrecy, and ruthlessness. It would be harder, riskier, and far more complicated than any legal battle. But it offered a level of control, a finality, that the courts couldn't. The decision solidified within me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power, about reclaiming my narrative, about delivering a message that would resonate louder than any courtroom judgment. I committed everything. The house, the cars, anything of value that wasn't tied up or already gone. I liquidated my life, converting it into ammunition for this corporate war. Eleanor assembled a small, tight-lipped team, financial analysts, corporate lawyers who specialized in complex transactions, private investigators who dug into Ascendant's structure, and key players. We worked in secret, operating out of anonymous office spaces, communicating through encrypted channels. The learning curve was steep. I devoured financial reports, market analysis, legal documents that felt like they were written in a foreign language. I learned about debt financing, equity stakes, shareholder agreements. I learned about leverage, about finding the cracks in a company's foundation, about who held the real power.
Max was oblivious.
He saw my silence as defeat, my focus on the divorce as capitulation. He was busy, I assumed, building his new life, his new empire with Clara. Good. Let them be distracted. Let them feel safe. Secrecy was my greatest weapon. The more I learned about Ascendant, the more vulnerable points Eleanor and her team identified. Disgruntled early investors, partners looking to cash out, looming financial deadlines that made them susceptible to a well-timed offer. We weren't aiming for a hostile takeover in the traditional sense, which would be too public, too slow. We were orchestrating a series of quiet, strategic moves, buying up smaller stakes, negotiating with key individuals, building influence from the periphery inward. The pressure was immense. My days were a blur of conference calls, reviewing documents, making decisions that felt impossibly high stakes. My old life felt like a distant dream. The garden I loved was neglected, the house empty and waiting to be sold. There was no room for anything but the plan. Doubt gnawed at me sometimes in the dead of night. Was I crazy? Could I really pull this off? What if I lost everything again? But then I would see another photo of Clara online, read another article about Nova's potential, and the cold resolve would return, stronger than ever. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my sanity, for my dignity, for the principle that you don't get to build your happiness on someone else's ruin and get away with it. This wasn't just revenge, it was correction. A forced rebalancing of a violently tilted scale. The deepening crisis wasn't just about finances anymore. It was about the immense personal risk, the emotional toll of living a double life, consumed by this secret war. The pieces started falling into place with terrifying speed. A key partner at Ascendant, facing personal financial issues, agreed to sell his significant stake. That opened the door. We secured bridge financing, leveraging every asset I had access to, plus guarantees from Eleanor's network who saw the strategic value in the move. We made offers to other minority shareholders, quiet, slightly over-market offers that were hard to refuse. Our approach was surgical, precise, and kept below the radar of typical market watchers. We structured the deals in a way that the full picture, the ultimate buyer, wasn't immediately obvious. I was a ghost in the machine, my name shielded behind layers of holding companies and legal entities. Eleanor called it the quiet closing. It happened over a tense, sleepless week. Signatures on documents worth millions. Wires transferred. Control shifting hands in boardrooms I'd only seen in pictures. It was abstract and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. And then it was done. I owned it. Or, more accurately, a complex structure of entities I controlled now held the majority stake and controlling interest in Ascendant Holdings. And Ascendant Holdings, in turn, held a significant, controlling investment in Nova Solutions. Clara's startup. Max's investment, it was all under my umbrella now. The irony was a bitter, satisfying taste on my tongue. They thought they had taken my future. I had just quietly acquired theirs. The setup for the reveal had to be perfect. Eleanor suggested a standard portfolio review meeting, something Ascendant held quarterly with the leadership of their key portfolio companies. Nova Solutions, as a promising venture, was on the agenda. Clara would be there, undoubtedly presenting her vision, her success. Max, as a key investor and, I assumed, still romantically involved, would likely be there too, basking in their shared accomplishment. My team ensured the meeting invite went out under the existing Ascendant management's name. Max and Clara wouldn't suspect a thing. The morning of the meeting felt surreal. I chose my outfit carefully. Not power suit armor, but something quiet, elegant, utterly composed. A silent threat. Eleanor met me at the anonymous office building where Ascendant Holdings was headquartered. We rode the elevator up, the numbers climbing slowly, each floor a beat of my accelerating heart. The air in the lobby was cool, sterile, hushed. People moved with purpose, briefcases in hand, their faces masks of corporate focus. None of them knew the seismic shift that had occurred at the top. We walked into the conference room just as the meeting was scheduled to begin. It was large, with a polished darkwood table, comfortable chairs, and a large screen for presentations. Clara was already there, set up to present, looking poised and confident. Max was beside her, a proprietorial arm resting on the back of her chair, a smug expression on his face. They looked like the golden couple, ready to showcase their triumph. Silence fell as I walked in. Max's jaw went slack. Clara's eyes widened, her confident smile freezing on her face. They hadn't expected me. Not here. Not like this. Eleanor stood slightly behind me, a silent sentinel. The few remaining Ascendant partners who were part of the transition looked uncomfortable, avoiding Max and Clara's eyes. I walked to the head of the table, to the chair that was now, technically, mine. I didn't sit immediately. I just stood there looking at them. At Max, the man who had betrayed me. At Clara, the woman who had helped spend my life savings. Their faces were a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning horror. The air was thick, heavy. I spoke, my voice calm, quiet, utterly devoid of emotion. Good morning. My eyes met Max's. His face was a roadmap of panic. I believe you're here to give a presentation on Nova Solutions. Clara found her voice, a shaky whisper.
What?
What are you doing here? My gaze shifted to her. I'm here because I own this company now. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. The silence returned, profound and absolute. Max finally found his voice, hoarse, disbelieving. That's impossible. You can't. I cut him off, my voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel. Oh, I can, Max. I just did. I gestured to Eleanor. Eleanor Vance is here to facilitate the transition. As the new majority shareholder and controlling interest in Ascendant Holdings, I wanted to be here personally for this particular portfolio review. My eyes swept over them, lingering for a moment on Max. Specifically, the review of Nova Solutions, a company in which I now have a vested interest. Clara stammered, but Ascendant invested in us. Max invested money he took from me. I stated plainly, the truth landing like a blow. Money that was intended for my retirement. Not your startup, Clara. Not your new life, Max. I finally sat down, the chair feeling solid beneath me. Consider my acquisition of Ascendant Holdings. A reallocation of assets. I allowed myself a small, humorless smile. A highly strategic reallocation. I looked at the blank presentation screen behind Clara. While I appreciate the initiative, I'm afraid this presentation is no longer necessary. My team has already completed our review of Nova Solutions' financials, management structure, and future prospects. Decisions regarding its future direction and leadership will be made internally. Clara looked from me to Max, her face pale. What does that mean? It means, I said, my voice hardening just slightly, that as of now, Nova Solutions is under new management. My management, I leaned forward, my gaze fixed on Clara. You were the founder, Clara.
Mistress.
The source of questionable early funding. Neither of you are part of the future I envision for this company. I looked at Max, his eyes wide with disbelief and terror. You stole my future, Max. I bought yours. The silence that followed was the most powerful sound in the room. Max was speechless, rooted to the spot, his face a mask of utter shock and defeat. Clara looked like she might cry. The few remaining Ascendant partners shifted uncomfortably. The power had drained out of them completely, flowing to me. I hadn't yelled, hadn't screamed, hadn't made a scene. I had simply stated fact, delivered a cold, undeniable reality built on months of silent, relentless work. They had blindsided me with betrayal. I had blindsided them with absolute, strategic victory. There was no arguing, no negotiating, no path forward for them built on their deceit. The look on Max's face, the moment he understood the totality of his defeat, the sheer, unexpected scale of it, was everything. He didn't just lose the money he stole, he lost the ambition, the mistress, the new life he'd tried to build on my foundation. It was all gone, swallowed whole by the structure I had built. The aftermath wasn't a Hollywood ending with triumphant music. It was quiet, almost anticlimactic in its finality. Max and Clara were escorted out of the building. There were legal details, of course. The flimsy loan agreement was easily invalidated with a change in ownership structure. My original retirement funds, now technically an internal investment within my own company's portfolio, were accounted for, albeit tied up in the valuation of Nova Solutions. The divorce went through quickly. Max didn't contest much. He was broken, his arrogance shattered. He had nothing left to fight with. Clara's startup was restructured.
Key personnel changed.
Its direction shifted. Whether it succeeds or fails now is largely irrelevant to the initial wrong. The point was the retrieval, the control, the undeniable consequence for their actions. There was no grand celebration for me. The vindication was cold, a quiet satisfaction that settled deep in my bones. The house was sold. The proceeds went towards consolidating my position with Ascendant. I moved into a smaller apartment, minimalist, functional. The corporate world I'd entered was complex, demanding. I kept Eleanor and her team close. I was no longer just the woman who lost her retirement. I was the woman who quietly bought the company that took it. It's a strange identity. Sometimes, late at night, the emptiness from the betrayal still echoes. The loss of the future I thought I had with Max, flawed as he was, is a scar that remains. Trust, once broken so completely, doesn't easily mend. But I am not powerless. I am not a victim. I took the worst thing that happened to me and twisted it into an unexpected, formidable strength. I learned that the most effective power isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the quietest, the most strategic, the one built in the shadows while your opponent is basking in the light. The money is tied up in assets, in control, in a world I never envisioned for myself. It's not sitting in a retirement account waiting for leisurely travel. It's active, invested, working. It's different. My life is different. It's not the comfortable, predictable future I planned. It's sharper, colder, undeniably more complicated. But it is mine. Every intricate, fiercely guarded piece of it. I walk into boardrooms now, into negotiations, and I carry the quiet knowledge of what I'm capable of. They stole my peace, they stole my security, they stole my trust. But they underestimated my capacity to build something new, something stronger, something entirely out of their reach, on the ruins they left behind. And that, in its own strange way, is a kind of freedom. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced a betrayal that changed the course of your life, tell me about it in the comments. I read all of them. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these stories to life.